Hello everyone, I'm Jacob, the Community Manager with Paradox Studio Black. Today we'll be reading the words of Chop as we take a closer look at one of the new situations coming in All Under Heaven. So load up your camels because we're exploring the Silk Road. Our aim with the Silk Road feature is to represent the movement of ideas and interconnectedness of the east and western sides of the map. The Silk Road touches on commerce thematically, but it isn't a trade system, even if it brings wealth and other benefits to its participants. Though certain routes were more or less prevalent at different times, the famed Silk Road was in fact a myriad of routes that snaked across Asia, with the Hexi Corridor and the Tarim Basin among the best known. These routes carried goods, travelers, and innovations, and many adjacent regions benefited from this flow indirectly. In All Under Heaven, the Silk Road situation is split into 6 regions: China, Central Asia, Tibet, Transcaspia, India, and the Occident. Each region has a phase, a hub that serves as its regional center, and an active Silk Road innovation. Let's explore each of these in turn. Regions within the Silk Road situation fluctuate between 3 separate phases: exceptional bounty, steady trading, and hardship. As with the Great Steppe situation, the phase of each region within the Silk Road situation is tracked separately, with different passive effects for all participants and counties in the region determined by the active phase. The phase determines the benefits received by participants in the situation, as well as the passive modifiers which apply to the region as a whole. So, how do phases change? As with some other situations, actions and events can trigger catalysts that push the situation towards a new active phase. Unique to the Silk Road situation, however, is that these catalysts are applied to each region separately. One region may be enjoying a boom even while another is hampered by constant war. Catalysts can be local or wider reaching. Because the Silk Road generally flows westward, upstream events, especially those in China, can impact regions downstream. A local conflict may be directly damaging to the Occident, but the collapse of the ruling Chinese dynasty will also be felt there indirectly. The dynastic cycle is a key driver of prosperity along the Silk Road. As long as it remains in a stable phase, the prosperity of all regions will grow towards exceptional bounty. For this reason, the status of the dynastic cycle is always shown at the bottom of the Silk Road window. In short, the benefits felt by those further west depends on the stability of all regions further east. The routes of the Silk Road in-game are marked by red arrows within the situation map mode. These aren't just for show. Hostile acts such as raid along these routes will reduce the affected region's prosperity. This map mode also shows the region's active innovation, as well as progress towards its next movement. So what are Silk Road innovations? Silk Road innovations are a new set of innovations that exist alongside the existing base sets. Each represents a different technology that was discovered in China earlier than elsewhere in the world, and can be spread to other cultures, typically via the Silk Road. Although there are 6 separate regions within the Silk Road situation, only 4 innovations are active at any time. China holds one, Tibet shares one with Central Asia, India shares one with Transcaspia, and Europe holds one. Every 12 years, each region passes its active innovation one step downstream. China then adopts a new active Silk Road innovation at random from its pool of valid innovations. As the Han culture unlocks more advanced Silk Road innovations, they are added to the pool that can be selected from by China. Cultures can gain access to these Silk Road innovations by having Chinese heritage, having a ruler of that culture hold a hub while the innovation is active in the region, having the Sinophilic tradition, or by using the Visit Silk Road Market decision to visit a hub. Chinese and Sinophilic cultures always have access to Han's known Silk Road innovations without needing to participate in the Silk Road directly. That's all well and good, but what is a hub and how do you visit one? Each region within the Silk Road situation has a single hub special building in a fixed location that represents a key regional center of trade, such as the Kram of Lhasa in Tibet or the Bazaar of Lahore in India. These hubs provide income and phased-based regional benefits and can be upgraded to a second tier to grant additional benefits to their holder. Building or upgrading a hub also triggers a positive catalyst that pushes the region towards greater prosperity. Hubs serve as sources of innovations for their holders' cultures and as destinations for the new decision to visit a Silk Road market. Every 10 years, this decision allows you to spend gold to travel to a hub where a Silk Road innovation is currently active. By passing a learning and stewardship skill check, you bring this innovation back and add it to your culture's pool of possible innovations to research. Alternatively, events representing economic opportunities can be encountered during the journey, allowing you to offset the cost of the journey and possibly even turn a profit in the process. And that about wraps up the Silk Road, but there's still more to discuss in this dev diary. Now we'll be reading the words of Ellie, a UX designer working with Paradox Studio Black. The reason we haven't heard from her before is because she was accidentally exiled to the Lost Realms for a couple of centuries. The upside to her exile is that she was trained in the art of user experience by a seasoned mentor. Now that she's back with us at the office, she intends to use that hard-won wisdom to make Crusader Kings 3 as good as possible. If you've played the Express tutorial introduced a while back, then you're already familiar with her work. And now she intends to carry on her mentor's legacy. How? By fixing the parts of the game that confuse first-time players. The current innovations panel is fine in parts, but it does have several things that we don't like about it. The visual states are pretty unclear. It's hard to tell what our current cultural fascination is, which innovations are already known isn't immediately apparent, and so on. Our experienced players can manage it well enough, but imagine for a moment that this is your very first time seeing the innovations panel. That is the essence of raw, unfiltered user experience. A UX designer's mission is to make it good. We want you to have a good time clicking buttons and seeing numbers change. We want the game and all of our different panels and buttons to make sense to the player. They should feel cool, intuitive, and understandable while communicating their information effectively to the player. Since we're already working on the Silk Road, we decided this was a good time to give this panel some extra attention. So here's what we've done to increase the user experience value of this panel in All Under Heaven. The Innovations panel now states 4 things at a glance: your current fascination, your culture's active spread target and remaining time, the next predicted spread, and a per innovation status label that provides a clear visual distinction between each innovation's current status. The changes to this panel surface different interface states that were previously easy to miss for players. Quite a bit has changed here in this panel, but here comes the hardest part of a UX designer's job. How do we know that the result is actually good? How do we know we didn't just make a bunch of changes that ended up making the experience even worse? Well, we test it. We put it in front of someone and measure whether the panel performs better than before on the outcomes that we care about. There's always room for more improvement though, so if you have ideas or suggestions for other panels, then please let us know in the comments below. One of the biggest changes? Innovations have associated skills now. If you have a high diplomacy skill, then you'll discover diplomacy innovations faster, if you set them as your fascination, of course. We also renamed exposure to spread, and made it a little more visible by placing it next to fascination at the top of the panel along with the time remaining. We've also made it so you can discover innovations outside of the era your culture is currently in. Although progress will be quite slow until your culture enters the era that innovation belongs to. When you browse an era that your culture hasn't reached, the panel makes the gate explicit, and innovations from that era show a long ETA when selected as a fascination, clarifying that research outside of your era is slow but possible. The new progress tooltip now breaks down the monthly chance to gain progress into its individual contributing factors, letting you diagnose why an innovation's research rate is fast, slow, or completely stalled. We think this is pretty cool stuff. Now, let's show how this works in practice and unlock some new gunpowder units. Our first step will be taking the Visit a Silk Road Market decision that we covered earlier. Once we take this decision, we actually have to travel all the way to the Silk Road Market. It'll take a while, but a few years spent on the road is a small price to pay for gunpowder. Once we arrive, we have to pass the learning and stewardship checks that were mentioned earlier. Our character got sick during the journey, but we passed the skill checks and got the brand new Fire Medicine innovation added to the pool of innovations available to our culture. We can now select this newly unlocked innovation as our cultural fascination, eventually completing it and unlocking the ability to make some gunpowder units. Can we be trusted with this power? Absolutely not. Are we going to do it anyway? Of course. And that's all we have to share with you this week. Remember to pet dogs and stay away from wizards who tempt you with promises of eternal youth and limitless power. And as always, if you want to stay up to date on everything Crusader Kings 3, then please subscribe to the channel and like this video. You know, it has been a while since we did one of these Dev Diary videos. Did you miss us? Well, we certainly missed you, dear listener. Thanks for listening to me ramble about Crusader Kings 3 for a little while today. We'll see you next time.